Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a build in the Be Quiet Pure Base 600 case. I've done a build in the 500, 700, 900, now we're at 600. I'm going to tell you guys what I liked about this case, how it compares to some of the other cases. That way you can better make a decision. So let's get started and let's get into the build. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Thank you for joining me for another video. If you like my content, remember to smash that like button, subscribe, leave a comment below. Have you considered any of these different Be Quiet cases? So recently, Be Quiet sent me their 600 Pure Base case. Now the first Be Quiet case that I ever did a build in was the 900 Revision 2. I started basically right at the top. At the time, I was looking for an absolutely killer case to do a really sick water-cooled loop. I knew that I wanted to throw everything in there, and I was a little bit tired of the other cases on the market just because everything was sort of the same. Even as much as I like Fractal Design and Corsair, all of their cases were kind of, not too much new going on. So as soon as I got my hands on that 900 Revision 2, I was shocked at just how awesome, unique, different, and flexible the case was. First of all, the motherboard is inverted. I mean, that's really cool. It was pretty much a breath of fresh air when I was building it, especially with an inverted motherboard. If you're a little bit more of an experienced builder, it definitely gives you a lot of nice challenges for you to do something really creative and really unique. And of course, I filled it up with as much water cooling gear as I could. And of course, that build had an AMD Ryzen 3900x. That was around the time when that came out. Also had a 2080 Super, so a fantastic build, and with the water cooling and with the Be Quiet fans, absolutely pristine performance. I really enjoyed it. And with their Silent Wings 3 fans, I absolutely loved how they performed. You can run them pretty high without them being too loud, especially in the case like that where it's really meant for quiet. It's a little bit more damped and a little bit more closed off, so you have to run them a little bit higher to get a little bit better airflow, as opposed to something that's more open. But on the plus side, the fans perform so well that you're not really even going to hear them, making it for a very pleasant experience. So after having such an awesome experience with that case, anytime that I went to do another build, I would always look at the Be Quiet cases, just because from the build quality to how everything is put together, it's such an awesome case to build in. And now as we get to the 600 series of these cases, the build quality remains great and it's a fantastic build experience as well. And in this case, I'm going to do a pretty high-end build. The last case I did, this is the 700 series right behind me. I have a 10900K in there with an Apex motherboard, so it's definitely a very high-end case. I didn't do water cooling here, but I do have an AIO from AlphaCool. It does come with stock Be Quiet fans, the AlphaCool AIO. They're both German companies, so I think the aesthetic as well as the fans and everything match really well. So after that, in this 600 build, we're going to do a very interesting and also very powerful build. We're going to be using the Gigabyte X570 Master motherboard along with the Ryzen 3800x. Now the 3800x is really a great performing CPU. It slots in just under the 3900X. It's still 8-core, 16-thread, but it's a little bit better bin than the 3700X. Now, depending on your budget, of course, if you find a cheaper 3700X, you could always go for that because it's not that big of a difference. But I've seen a few sales where the 3800X is priced really nicely, sometimes close to or even under 300 bucks. And for that, I'd rather just go for the 3800X, which is going to give you that little bit extra performance. And of course, we're also going to be doing an Nvidia 2080 Super GPU here. Now, we're using the Founders Edition, and I've done a video on the Founders Edition 2070 Super. And before, I said how much I absolutely love these Founder Edition GPUs. In the past, they have gotten some heat just because their coolers were not as good when they used to be blower style. The third-party cards often really outperform them. But in my opinion, at least the current 2080 Super, the coolers are pretty good. It's not as good as something like an Asus Strix card. It's not going to get you down maybe in the 60s in terms of temperature when you're gaming. Generally, these Founders Editions will go up to like 73, 74, depending what your ambient temperature is, but they're fairly quiet. The cooling performance is really good, and in my opinion, The build quality is absolutely fantastic on these cards, and it far outmatches a lot of third-party cards, which even the more expensive, higher performing cards often feel a little bit cheap with a lot of plastic bits. The Founders Edition just feels fantastic in terms of build quality, and of course Nvidia always has some of the best PCBs for the Founders Edition. That's why I initially bought this 2080 Super. I actually had it water cooled before. I took the block off and I put the original cooler back on, just because Founders Edition cards from Nvidia have some of the best PCBs around for you to water cool, and you get fantastic performance. Now, rounding out the RAM, we're using the HyperX RAM. This is actually very high performing RAM. It's 16 gigabytes, but it's running at 3600 megahertz. If you guys have seen, 3600 is usually the sweet spot for Ryzen systems. Everything just seems to work better there with all the timings and everything like that. And this RAM is also Samsung B-Die, which is very high performing memory. And of course, for the main operating system drive, we're going to be using the Gigabyte Aorus M.2. Now, this is the newer generation, which you get really fantastic speeds on these AMD platforms. You know, these X570 motherboards do support these faster M.2 hard drives. And even though it's hard to notice a difference between something like this and like a Samsung Evo M.2 or something like that, when you do transfer files between like speed hard drives, you definitely see that very fast speed. And of course, to round out the build, bequiet also sent me their power supply as well as the PureBase 2 air cooler. I'm very interested in testing out this air cooler to see how this 3800X is going to perform. Usually these bequiet air coolers are fantastic. In the other build that I did the Dark Rock Pro, which is their most high-end air cooler, and that was also on a 10900K, which, you know, it's a 10-core processor. It's going to run a lot higher than this 3800X. That performed awesomely well. Now, I don't think I necessarily need that for the 3800X, so we're going to try this PureBase 2. And of course, if you always need a little more cooling, you can step up to the Dark Rock Pro 4. That's a fantastic cooler, and that's definitely going to be almost overkill for the processor like this. But in general, these Ryzen processors don't run terribly hot. And as you know, you can overclock them, but generally not too much. They come pretty nicely overclocked from the factory as well. So I don't think heat is going to be a major factor, especially as we have, of course, these bequiet fans on it. So I think this air cooler is going to be more than sufficient to really handle whatever the 3800X throws at it. And of course, everything's going to be powered by that bequiet power supply. So we have a nice integrated system with everything matching. I love it when that happens. So everything should perform really well and fit in aesthetically without a hitch. In terms of the case itself, the way that I would choose between the different bequiet cases, first, of course, is budget. If your budget doesn't allow for a 900 revision 2, of course, you can, you know, mark that off and save it for a future build. But if you want a little bit more on the affordable end, the 500 and especially the 600 series cases, then of course the main difference between the 5, 6, 700, 800, the size, you're going to be getting a little bit bigger. Some of them are going to have a little bit more feature-rich sort of elements to them, of course, with the best being the 900. But even the 500 and the 600 have a lot of great build features, and it's things that you really sort of have to build in them as you go through. You just touch and see the quality of the materials, how the panels kind of come together. You can definitely tell that whenever they designed these cases, they sat down and really did physical builds to see how things would work, and if something didn't, they probably changed it. So to summarize, this is definitely a pretty affordable case. It's not as expensive as some of the other big cases like the 900 series, but it still has a lot of nice little features in it. Very nice build quality. I think these look fantastic. I absolutely love the bequiet aesthetics. You can even see the 700 series behind me here with the LED strips. Looks amazing. So definitely, if you want a case that's a little bit different than other cases on the market and comes with amazing fans, usually when I get a case and it comes with included fans, almost immediately I get rid of the fans because they're not too good. But in the bequiet cases, these are fans that normally I'd buy anyway to put in my water-cooled builds. So I'm really happy when I get more fans with these type of cases because I can actually use them and I don't have to chuck them and put something else for them really well. Great airflow, static pressure. Their noise profile is very pleasant. So that's definitely definitely a pretty big plus to building in these type of cases. Build quality is great, price is great, aesthetics look amazing. So I would basically just see what type of build you want to do and make sure everything fits. Of course, when I choose a case, I look at these factors such as the price, the build quality, what features it has, but also what I want to fit in it. If I want to do a massive water cooling build, of course I'm going to want to use one of the bigger cases like the 700 or the 900. But if I want more of a compact case so I can fit just the right amount of hardware in there, which sometimes I love doing, 600 and the 500 series are definitely great alternatives. They're going to take up a lot less footprint on your desk, and they're still going to look pretty great, and you'll be able to pack a lot of power in them as well. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this build. Let me know if you have any questions below. Remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys on the next video.